Well, hello and welcome to tonight's live stream. This is the Truth Proof live stream from the UK, broadcasting around the world. Now, I'm going to have a look in the chat, see who's coming to the chat tonight and who's supporting the show. There's quite a few of you. Let's have a look. We are going to welcome to tonight's show Chris Wright, Janice Parry, and Deborah Singleton, by the way, will be doing our moderating. And I've got to warn you now, Deborah takes no prisoners. So, you'd best be on your good behaviour. Okay, nickname is in the chats. Michael Adams, Janice Parry. Michael Adams, let's have a look. I've got to go through the chat, so just bear with me. Patricia Adams, Mally Dodgson, welcome to the show, Mally. Tim Brennan, did I mention Tim? So Tim Brennan's in the show. Blue Shift is on. Ralph Winter, Rick Allen, I mentioned, I'm sure. Miss Jilly B, Aldo Rain, and Jack SH, MKMD Exploration. I've got to welcome everybody to tonight's show. I've got a great guest on tonight. And without further ado, I'm just going to run into our little intro. So, as I say, my name's Les, the producer of tonight's show, producer of the Truth Proof live stream. Without further ado, we're going to go to Paul and his guest.
Thank you very much, Les. And as I say every week, it's soon come round. And we've got a great guest tonight, Maria Stevens, author of the book, The Boogeyman Chronicles. I hope I've said that one right. In the UK, we say the Boogeyman Chronicles. And researcher and experiencer. Marie, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm honored.
No, you honestly more than welcome. And I think the people in the chat and the people that are going to listen to this afterwards are going to be very interested in what you've got to tell us. And the reason I find it so interesting is you're not just somebody who's looking into these things. You've had your own experiences, and that to me, the boots on the ground. You've got the sort of scars and the tattoos to prove it, kind of thing. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start from an early age and we'll just work through these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in the South in 1977, and I was born neurodivergent, meaning I'm autistic and I have ADHD. And I didn't know that. So that would have helped to know it sooner rather than later, but I know it now, and that's all that matters. So, but I grew up in a very unhealthy environment. My father was very abusive, and my mother, just was neurodivergent herself. And we were just, trying to get through all these difficult things. A lot of difficult things happened really like early on. And so one thing I do remember is my mother was very, very psychic, and she would just know things about people and certain circumstances, certain things, like she used to keep notebooks that she would do automatic writing. And she actually predicted several things, and she predicted the assassination attempt on President Gerald Ford. So she predicted that. She knew when my one of my siblings got locked in a closet at school before they even told her. That she knew when my dad got a flat tire on the way to work, and things like that. She just knew. And so one of her friends said, "Why don't you come to these classes?" And the classes were run by a Londoner named Tony Liggett. And so she took classes with Tony for many years and got to be very, very good. I then grew up being really different, really sensitive, knowing things about people. And I never really thought to ask my mother, like, is this normal? What is this? I grew up immediately having horrible paranormal encounters. My first encounter was when I was, I think maybe 1 or 2. I was very young. I was able to stand up in the crib and hold on to the side of the crib. And I remember in the half light of the room, I'm in the crib, I'm awake, and all of a sudden I look up and I see something floating. But yet at the same time, I have a very distinct memory of being the thing floating and looking down at me in the crib. So I kind of, I guess, split into two. I don't know. But I asked Paul Eno, I said, what was that? Because as you, I don't know if you know, Paul Eno is a, well-known paranormal pioneer and investigator. He's been doing this for over 50 years. And he and his son have to kind of come up with like a glossary of terms because they've seen so much stuff that no one has a name for it. So what was that? And he said, well, I don't know. It sounds like a shifting identity point where you in the multiverse, you just kind of split into two. Like a year or so after this first experience, I had the same thing happen. It was Easter. I'm in my little purple dress, my little purple tricycle with my little purple egg basket. And I'm, very cranky. I think I probably needed a nap, but I still remember my mom and my sibling, trying to get me to look for eggs. And I still remember there was a moment where I saw something and I was pointing up at it because I was very, very scared. But yet I also remember looking down and seeing the whole scene.
So what were you looking up at, do you think?
That's the thing. I don't remember. I do remember whatever I was down here looking up. I was very upset at what I saw. So maybe it was scary. I don't know. But yeah, those were the two first encounters I ever had. And I still remember them to this day because it wasn't a dream. I was awake and I wasn't asleep. I wasn't astral projecting when I was sleeping. You know what I mean? I was very much awake. So what these things were, I mean, truly, I just don't know. I have to go by Paul's description.
And the books, your mum's notebooks, do you still have them?
I don't. She threw them out. She got mad one day and she threw them out. And then she years later, she was like, I shouldn't have thrown those out.
Yeah.
And she got so mad. Yeah.
That must be a big regret. Seriously, when you've wrote down all these strange encounters. I had a book, Mary would tell you, my wife and our girls, and I had it for years. And it was just, I don't know, A5, thick, quite thick, and I've called it the Book of the Strange. And every time anything happened, I wrote it in it. I took it to somebody's house to let them look at it. I'd actually given them a gift of a chair and everything. I'm not going into great detail. I left it outside a chair, and they kept it and said I'd never had it. They'd never had it. And I could go off on a rant even now thinking about it, because it really annoys me. Because when I wrote Night People, I know there's more information within that book that would have helped me enhance the book. But this is about you. So your mum threw the books away. So
she got mad at herself. She got like, oh, what am I doing? This is stupid. And she threw the books away. And then, so many years. I mean, I heard her several times throughout the years go, oh, why did I do that?
So what have you then got fragments of these bits of information in the books that you've sort of pieced together, or stories from your mum?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories from my mom because she experienced a lot herself. She actually had a UFO abduction that she swore, I think for her own mental stability, she swore it was a dream. But yeah, so do you want to hear that story?
Well, yeah, let's hear that before we've come to it, haven't we? So
okay.
And
I didn't know if you want me to get into it.
As you like, yeah, because it's a first-hand account, Marie. I mean, you're telling it straight from your mum, aren't you?
Yeah, well, my mother was, like I said, she was very tough and she was very good at what she did. She was very psychic. I'll tell you about the dream that I had. I'll tell you about that after this story. But she, I mean, was formidable. She was not very tall. She was not a very big woman, but she was just tough as nails, and nothing scared her except for this dream. When she told me about this dream that she had, she would shake with fear. She would just tremble because it scared her so bad. And I always wondered what scared my mom so bad. So she eventually told me in full what happened to her one night. She had my two siblings from another marriage, but she had just married my father. It was 1967, 68, somewhere around there. This was before Star Trek even. And they were living in San Diego, California, in this tiny little apartment. And my mother was like I said, neurodivergent. She was very dyslexic, so she could barely read. But she came from a tiny little southern town, they didn't care about that kind of thing. But anyway, they here she was in her mid to late 20s. And one night she has a dream, like she always said, of being on a ship, being on a craft. And she didn't know what a gray was. There wasn't that kind of thing out there like at that time. And she remembers this gray being very, very, very tall. My mother was about 5'6", and this gray was probably about 6 foot. She had the distinct impression that this gray was a female, even though we don't really assign genders to them. She had a feeling that it was female, and she had a feeling that it was higher ranking, is what she said, than the other sort of smaller grays in her periphery. She just had a feeling that this gray was in authority, And she said this gray wore a shimmering blue tunic with bell sleeves, and a belt in the middle, kind of looked like a bathrobe, but it was like a tunic. And she said the material looked like metal. My mother made clothes for my siblings, so she knew fabrics pretty well. She said, I've never seen this kind of fabric before. It moved and it shimmered like it was metal. And she said, I can't even describe it. She said, there was nothing like it I've ever seen before or since. And she said that the gray had some sort of like insignia, how like when generals, have that, the bars there, something like that. So she said this gray handed her a coaster sized medallion of sorts in her hand. And my mother said it looked very much like the seal of the United States. If you look on the back of a dollar bill, you see the eagle with the shield and the, olive branch and the arrows. It looked very much like that. So this gray put this in this, it was pretty sizable, in my mother's hand. And my mother exclaimed, oh, that's like what we have at home. We have something like this at home. She then remembers going up in a lift with this gray. And she said the doors opened up just like Star Trek went, And so they walked into this, excuse me, they walked into this room that was dimly lit. And she said she saw the gray walk over, and she remembers, she said everything in this room was brushed metal. It was very smooth. There was no knobs, no levers, no buttons, nothing protruding. It was all very smooth. So she remembers this gray, excuse me, walking over to what looked like a control panel. And she said that this gray literally got its hand and just went like this across the control panel, and the whole entire ship powered up. The lights came on, everything started working. And it was this that snapped my mom out of that stupor, because I noticed now that I've heard a lot of stories, a lot of abductees, they have kind of like this sort of dingy stupor like thing about them when they're on a ship. They're just kind of like, wow, look at that. They're just kind of like all surprised and everything. She said as soon as she saw the gray do this and everything came to life, she then realized, she told me, oh my God, this thing could kill me. If you turn on a ship by doing this with its hand, she said this thing, it powered its own ship. And she said this thing, she realized with the wave of its hand, it could have killed her if it wanted to. So my mother.
How old was she at this point?
She was probably mid-20s.
Right. Sorry. Carry on. Yeah.
And she was absolutely horrified by this when she saw it. She, like I said, she snapped out of that stupor. And she started screaming to this gray, who was communicating with her telepathically. And she was screaming, please take me home. Please take me home. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm scared. Please don't hurt me. I just want to go home. And the gray told her telepathically, we're not going to hurt you. We're here to, we're not going to hurt you. You're safe. You're fine. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. We mean you no harm. It was very, very peaceful and very kind, like, to reassure her like that. she said at this point she had just come unglued and she was not, having it. So she then remembers waking up in her room, sitting up in her bed, kind of like, what, and she woke up and then she went, oh my God. And she ran to, there was a window above the bed and she ran to the bed and parted the curtains and looked out because she thought for sure she would see a craft out there.
There's nothing.
Nothing.
And obviously that stayed with her well into her later years.
Yeah.
But why do you think that she tried to rationalize it as a dream? Did she not want to accept that this, with all the experiences that she'd had and the strange abilities, why do you think that she didn't want to accept the alien scenario, for want of a better word?
I think she and I were a lot alike, and that the whole alien thing just really scared us. Like, I've never been abducted, not that I know of anyway, but I've always been like, no UFO experiences. Thank you. Okay. Ghosts. Yeah, fine. But no, no UFOs. And my mother was kind of the same way. And like I said, every time, well into her 50s and 60s, every single time I asked her about this dream, she would shake with fear. And my mother never did that. My mother had tons of experiences, tons of stuff happened to her. And every time I asked her, she would very freely tell me about the other stuff. But every time I mentioned this UFO thing, it really struck her to her core. Like I said, she said, as soon as she saw the gray do this with its hand, she thought immediately, oh my God, I'm going to die.
It's just so interesting, isn't it? Not taking anything away from you, Gray, and that encounter, because we want to hear about your dream in a moment. But I spoke to a guy today, and I hope he comes into chat, and just quite out of blue. And I've spoken to him many times. We're good friends, but he told me he likes to do a bit of hunting, should we say? All legally. He'll have permission to go on land, but there's a wood close to Woolsthorpe, which is here in UK, and people have heard me talking about Woolsthorpe. I've heard strange things about the wood, not alien related, but strange things seen in the wood and spheres of light. But as we're talking today, he just dropped it out. Now, there's a program here in the UK called The Cube. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have watched it, but there's a mask that they put on the people in the cube, and it looks a bit like an alien's head. And he just dropped it out. He says, I were in the wood, it's evening time, and I'm just sort of looking round, and I looked and I saw this face. And I instantly thought, that's when you said the grey, I instantly thought that's similar to an alien's head. He said, I just looked at it, kind of looked away, and it had gone, but he knew he'd seen it. But just, I don't know, just one of the bizarre little stories that you get told. But enough of me. We want to hear about, we can move on to the dream if you want, or we'll carry on through childhood.
Yeah, well, just another sort of testament as to how my mother was. My father was in law enforcement, and I remember I was about 6 years old when I finally realized that my dad's job was dangerous, in a real life sense. I was very worldly 6 years old, so it finally hit me. Oh my God, my dad could die. I don't know what happened to me, but I proceeded then to have the same nightmare for the next 2 weeks, nonstop, every single night. Every single night was the same nightmare. I'm sitting here looking at a photograph, when we actually had photographs, looking at a photograph of my father's tombstone with his name on it, and there's really thick green grass around the tombstone. And then I wake up in a horror, in a fright, and I'm drenched in sweat. I'm gasping for air, and that was the nightmare every single night for 2 weeks. Now, I did not tell a soul about this nightmare because I thought people would thought I was crazy or silly. So I didn't say anything. No. I didn't tell nobody. I was just like, no, I'm not going to say anything. So I didn't tell anyone at school, no friends, no nothing.
So 39 years later, what do you think it was?
So what happened was, though, I'll tell you. So here I am. I'm sitting I'm 6 years old. I'm sitting at the end of the table. My mom's sitting at the other end. We're at a long dining table. And we're sitting there, and usually we're pretty talkative about our day, but I was pretty quiet. I was getting to the point where I wasn't sleeping really well because I was scared I was going to have another nightmare. So I was getting very tired, and I started to dread bedtime. And I remember my mother She was this good. She was just looking at me like this from across the table. She was just like looking at me. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm in trouble. I did something bad. She's like, ready to pounce on me. And she looked at me and very matter of factly, she just looked at me. She said, for the last 2 weeks, you've been having dreams of your dad dying. She said, you'd have the same nightmare every single night for 2 weeks. And she said, the nightmare is that you're looking at a picture and there's a tombstone with your dad's name on it, really green grass around it.
Yep.
Nobody knew this. Nobody knew. She did not know. I did not tell her, but she picked up just like that. That's how good she was.
And did you open up then and say, yeah, you're right?
I did. I was so, because I always wondered what mom did. I never understood it because people would come over to the house and my mother would sit in the living room and she would hold a piece of jewelry, which is psychometry, as we know already. And she would sit there and read these people for like an hour or more. And the person would be like, oh my God, how did you know that? Oh my gosh. So I would hear this screaming from down the hallway because I was banished to the bedroom and I would poke my head around the corner. And I would always hear this from people. And I never knew what she was doing or saying until she did it to me. And then I was like, oh, this is what mom does. So interestingly, though, when she called it out, something happened. It broke something. And I stopped having that nightmare.
Now, that's what I was going to say. Did it stop after that?
It did. It did. It was interesting. The minute she called attention to it, it broke something. And then I never had that nightmare again.
So what other things? You said that she'd predicted a few things, but if she sensed or perceived anything bad, did she tell the people?
Absolutely. Yeah. She used to work with an attorney and she used to work with a detective. And the part of the South that we lived in at that time, which was South Florida, she actually used to work with them. And they told her they liked that she could see past, present, and future of a particular cold case. And she was helping them solve a case about some sort of rich real estate developer got killed. Years later, they found his body in a freezer. And so she was then helping them, trying to find the person and stuff. And they really liked working with her. She was, asked to be on the radio. She was really great. I'll leave you with one story of hers, and then I'll go into my story. But
yeah,
my mother was so gifted, if you will, that one night she found out, that my oldest sibling had a baby. They were pregnant. They then, had a baby, and my mother found out about the birth, and she so wanted to be there. It really pained her that she, because she was such a good mom and she wanted lots of kids and lots of grandkids. So she so wanted to be there. And she went to bed that night wishing, but she didn't try to astral project. Wasn't trying, but she just went there she went to bed with a lot of, angst, anguish in her heart that she really wanted to see her first grandkid. So the next morning, my oldest sibling calls my mom in a panic saying, Mom, you were here last night. She was like, what are you talking about? Let me hear. My oldest sibling's in California and we're in Florida at this point. And my sibling is saying, Mom, you were here last night. We saw you. She's like, what are you talking about? So according to my sibling, some sort of image of my mother walked into the room, checked on the baby, looked at my sibling and their partner, and then walked out. So my mother accidentally astral project. I don't know, involuntary. I don't know, but she went to bed, I guess, with so much desire in her heart to see her first grandchild that some part of her went there and checked on it.
And this part of your mum, this you're calling astral projection, this out of body experience. It's fascinating that, and why shouldn't your mum be clothed or a man be clothed? But it's fascinating that people who do this are fully clothed, and so there's a mind thing. To me, there's a mind thing going off more than a spiritual out of body thing. Mm-hmm. I can't get my head around it. I haven't got the words for it, and I don't mean it's not happened, but there's more of a mind projection than an out of body experience, because I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say? Yeah, who's to say that we're not in layers of some sort? You know what I mean? And a part of us went, a part of her went there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And they say that, at night we come very close to the veil when we sleep. We come close to that veil. So who knows that maybe she was able to kind of detach and kind of, follow her desires to there.
Yeah.
But it's interestingly, my sibling said that my mom was wearing a long white tunic and a white turban, which is
Right.
something my mother didn't wear.
She wouldn't wear, or she did wear.
She never wore stuff like
No,
that.
no, no,
No.
no, no. Just crazy, isn't it? It's,
So
it's
yeah.
interesting, yeah. When I say
So
crazy, I don't mean like derogatory.
yeah, I know it's so odd. But my mother never had any sort of recollection of that. She didn't remember any of it. She was just like, I don't even remember doing that. I just remember going to bed with a lot of sadness in my heart that I couldn't see my first grandchild. And then
And
then
this
they
happened.
call. Yeah, then they call the next day, say, you were here last night. I saw you. I woke up and I saw you walk into the room with a white tunic on and a white turban. And then you checked on the baby because the crib was at the foot of their bed. So you checked on the baby, but then you looked up at us to check on us, make sure we were okay. And then you just turned and walked out of the room.
Amazing.
So,
Well,
yeah.
before we move on to your story, I just want to ask for our listeners in chat, and I can see a few questions coming up in block capitals and what have you. Keep them in block capitals, please, and keep them coming. And we'll ask a few of these questions in 15 minutes or so. And you'll lead us now, Maria. Tell us where you want to go.
Well, so after these two experiences that I had, where I was kind of out of body some way, my father moved in with his second wife, and she had a condo, apartment, what have you, and it was infested. There was something very malicious there. I went back and here I was like 2 or 3 when I first went to live there or went to stay there. But I was 14, 15 when I left there again for the second time. And there was still something there. But whatever was there was very, very malicious. It was very nasty. It loved picking on me. And I remember many, many nights waking up um, with something sitting on the bed, something pulling the covers off the bed, something with long fingernails grabbing at my feet all night. Um, just hideous stuff, whispering in my ear to where I could hear I could feel the breath on my face.
Now,
Yeah.
that was a question I was going to ask you. And did the whispering, did it, obviously if somebody's whispering in your ear, it's close, but did it actually feel like whatever it was actually sat on your shoulder?
Yes, it was. I could hear words, but I couldn't ever make out what it was. And it's always in that moment where you're kind of half asleep, half awake, and it's always just there. And I could feel the breath on my face and my ear to where I would just I wake up and I look around, and no, nothing was there. But
Yeah.
I felt that breath on my face, yeah, many times.
Doors shut, were lights on in hallway or anything?
Yeah, as far as like stuff happen, like poltergeist type activity,
Yeah,
we
but
never.
what were the doors shut in your room, or could you see the landing light and things like that?
Oh yeah, there was enough light left on in the room to where there was nothing. I couldn't see anything. That's the one thing that so upset me about that one place. I could feel, hear, experience stuff, but I could never see anything. I never saw what that thing looked like. I just knew that it wasn't good. There was an odd apartment. There was a strange sort of the way it was built. This apartment was over on this side, and you had to climb 2 sets of stairs just to get up to my stepmother's place. And I remembered that one apartment was very creepy. You could never get it. Nobody could ever really live in that place. It was always for sale. It was always for rent. People would move in, and within a few months, they'd move right back out again. And I never got a chance to really ask why. But it's suspicious. And every time we would walk past that apartment, I would always get the creeps. I felt like someone was staring at me, and I would just hightail it up to the second floor, to where my stepmom was. But I think whatever it was in there maybe was going over, because I don't like sharing walls.
Is it still there? Is the building still there?
The building's still there. I Google Earthed it. I really would like to go back. I definitely think whatever is there is still there.
You've no desire to start asking questions and see if anybody else has experienced it?
I would, yeah, if I knew who to ask, I would definitely. Yeah, I would. I wish there was some sort of registry where you could call and say, "Hey, is this place haunted?" In certain states in America, they actually have to tell you that. They actually have to say, "Okay, this place has been reported haunted, so proceed at your own risk." But some places are not. They're like real estate agents,
Yeah.
estate agents. They're not allowed, or they don't have to let you know that a place is haunted. So yeah, that's interesting. About I don't know how it is in the UK, but it's like that here.
So,
But
so in when these strange experiences were happening in this apartment, in your mind's eye, what do you think it looked like? I know we're only speculating because you never saw anything, but
mhm.
I mean, are we talking about something? Obviously, there's a pressure on bed. You can feel it, the bed go down. Can you?
Yeah, to me, this thing was probably just a very big dark shadow. It was there was nothing pleasant or even neutral about it. This was 100% malicious, 100% just nasty. And I don't know if it was demonic. It kind of it felt it as much evil as it could be, demonic, but at the same time, it didn't really feel demonic. It felt very just hideous. There was just something, very nasty. I don't know if you guys ever had experiences with just like a very nasty. You feel the heaviness and the terror before you even see it,
Yeah,
and
you
it
can
was like
perceive
that.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so, obviously, we'll move on to some other aspects of what's happened to you, but just to stay with this a moment, so you can recognize that feeling. Have you felt it since and thought this thing's here again?
No, I mean, I felt a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Things entities have an energy signature. You can usually feel them before you see them. Um, so this particular thing, I remember, say, like, long story short, I at 9 years old, I had an encounter. This was the last really terrifying encounter in this apartment, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. So one night, I'm in my room. I had moved in at this point because my mother lost custody. She had to move, and she didn't want to put me in the foster care system, so she, let me go live with my dad. And I'm living with my dad and his stepmom, and I'm not kidding you. One night I was so tormented by something. I kept hearing voices. I kept hearing, the bed was shaking, and I thought, that's it. I'm not staying in here. So stupid me. I'm, all of 9 years old. So I'm thinking, well, if I go to the living room, I'll be safer. No. So I go to the living room, and I go there because my parents' door, I must have been really spooked by something because my parents' door was right there. I'm not allowed to go get them unless the house is burning down because they're sick of me running in there screaming something's after me. They don't believe me. So anyway, I go, okay, if I lay on the couch here, if something happens, I could just run in there and I'll be okay. That's what I thought. It was about 5:30 in the morning. I have to get up around 7:30 for school. So I'm thinking, well, if their alarm goes off, I'll hear it and I'll get up and I'll run to the bedroom, pretend like I was never on the couch. So I lay down on the couch thinking I'm going to get hopefully a couple more hours of sleep, uninterrupted. I'm laying there, and then all of a sudden, I'm not kidding you, something attacked me physically, jumped on me. It felt like it was very impish. It was very tiny. It was like all of 2 or 3 feet. But I felt a hand over my eyes and I felt a hand over my nose and mouth. I felt something holding my arms down, my biceps down. So I was pinned down like this. And I remember just being pinned down, and I'm like this, struggling, trying to get free. Now I can't breathe because whatever this thing is has its hand over my nose and mouth. And the hand that's over my eyes, I can kind of see below the hand, I can kind of see like underneath it. And I don't see a body. There's enough light in the room. I don't see a body. I don't see anything, but I felt the weight of this thing. There was something on me. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a night terror. This thing was on me, hissing in my face. So not only did I have this, but I heard, just snarling and hissing in my face.
And do you think
I
only one? Because you're saying it's holding your arms, hands on face, but is it obviously this is moving?
Yeah, and I could feel everything moving, and I'm being held down. I didn't know what to do. I'm running out of air at this point. I'm trying to scream. I'm trying to breathe. I'm looking frantically down, thinking something's on, someone got into the house. My brain is immediately goes to logical. I'm thinking someone's attacking me. Didn't see anything. Something said, and I don't know how I knew this, but something said, grab it by its arms and throw it down. And I'm like, okay, and I'm running out of air thinking, okay, I'm dying. I'm going to die. So I remember reaching up and I remember feeling little spindly arms in my hands. I could feel them. I could feel the arms. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I'm like, well, there is something here. And then I threw it down and I heard this thing snarling and hissing as it ran off. But I don't know what it was. I didn't get a look at it. It was just tiny. It jumped on me and I guess it tried to kill me.
Frightening experience. I wonder if any people listening to this have had similar experiences. It was, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So where do you want to go with this now, Marie?
So about this apartment, what happened was my dad remarried his third wife. So we went to live with, in another place. But as I was about 14, 15 years old, I came back in contact with my first stepmom. And I came back to see her and she was still in the same apartment. And I remember walking in there going, oh God. She was like, oh, hey, you spend the night. And I'm like, oh, So I was like, okay. So I spent the night there. And you know what? That thing still messed with me. It still tried. It was like, oh, hello, old friend, And I was like, oh God, not you. And I still remember it still whispered in my ear and tried to wake me up. But at this point, I was spiritually a little stronger and I was a little more confident within myself. I wasn't that timid, scared little kid anymore. I was a teenager. I'd seen some stuff and I was a little tougher. So I noticed this thing didn't really touch me as much as it used to, but it tried. And I was just like, yeah, no. So
that's telling us in a way that it was, whatever these things are, or in your case, it was picking on your emotional vulnerability. And obviously we don't know the ins and outs of everything, but there must have been quite a bit of trauma as well within your life at times, perhaps. And do you think it was feeding off that stress and that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the paranormal and just in life in general, bullies are bullies.
Yeah.
And there's something about them, whether they're real, they're physical, or they're paranormal, they tend to prey on the scared, the timid, the shy, the weak, the not so confident types. And that's how I was as a little kid. I had no idea what this was. And I was scared to death to stand up for myself. I was a scared little monkey, as a little kid, just this timid little thing. But as I got older, I grew some cojones, and I kind of got this thing where it's just like, I don't scare easily anymore. So,
did you tell your stepmom?
All throughout those years from the ages of 2 to the ages of about, 8, 9, I tried desperately to tell them. And this is where it gets really heartbreaking because, the adults in your life are supposed to protect you. And they completely told me, no, you're imagining things. Stop being a naughty kid. You're just being naughty. You're just trying to get attention. And they didn't want to believe me. And so I was pretty much left to fend for myself. And that was really hard to do. And so after this house, we then moved into a succession of other houses. And whatever was there, of course, because I'm this medium, I'm this little antenna that's, a beacon to these things. Wherever I was, wherever I went, if there was something malicious or not, or what have you, it would always show itself to me. So I was constantly feeling things. And it wasn't until I was about 12 years old that I finally realized, oh, wait a minute. I think I'm sensitive. I think I'm picking, I think there's something with me. And I started noticing that because my mother and I, what happened was my father was building a house out in, the rural sort of area of where we, were at that time. And I remember I kept getting a really creepy feeling because they had just poured the concrete foundation and they had just gotten the wood framing up and they had the plumbing, the pipe sticking up. So, that's all there was to this house. And I remember looking at this one area of what was supposed to be my grandfather's bedroom, because he was supposed to come live with us. I remember looking at this one area and I just got the creeps. I was like, there's something weird here. Kept feeling I was being watched. And my mother, I let her come see. I said, Mom, come see the new house, you know. So I snuck her onto the property and we all looked around, and she same thing. I didn't tell her nothing. She walked right over to that spot and she goes, I don't like this spot. What is this? And I said, I don't know. I've been feeling something from that too. She goes, this isn't good. There's something bad here. And I was like, yeah, I know. I felt it too, you know. So, and then when the house was built, whatever that thing was in my grandfather's room, and we couldn't go in that room. I was terrified to go in that room because I knew something was in there and I knew it was watching me. And if I was caught, like I call in the book, I call the chasers, because I've had entities kind of come up on me and I could kind of feel them, and I'm like, oh God. And I, you know, as a little kid, you don't know any better, so you run away, and whatever this thing is hot on your heels. You know it's right behind you, so you know it's chasing you. And I've actually had a couple of them like trip me, and I have fallen on my face, and I've turned around and I have sensed a presence like, yeah, I got you, you know. So it's terrified to be chased by something you can't see but you know is there, you know.
So do you think that the foundation that your dad had put in for this house, whatever it was, do you just think it were resident before the house was built to that small area of earth?
Absolutely, yeah. And the place, you know, I know it's like this in the UK too, but or anywhere really, but I mean, in certain rural areas, you can, if you walk it through the woods, you can feel certain spots where something, you know, is either not right, or, you know, my mother was so sensitive. She told me she could feel energy spots. She would walk through all over the property and she would stop and she could feel something. Um, and where we lived, where I first lived with my mother, we had a lot of people come through and say that they, you know, spiritual people saying that they could see a lot of Native American entities on that land. So you can feel what's on the land, and that's one of the things when I do paranormal investigations. That's one of the things that I'm kind of pretty good at, is that I can kind of go on the land and I can tell you if there was, you know, this person was here, this person was there. I can go into houses and I can tell you what the sort of emotional residue is, you know, what the energy that people put out, whether living or dead, you know, is still, it soaks into the ground if
Yeah.
it's tumultuous enough, like, you know, like battlegrounds and places where people have been killed or sick or imprisoned. It soaks into the ground. It's just the ground is saturated with that emotional energy.
So, and I take on board what you're saying, but how does that explain the intent and the kind of intelligence to the emotional energy? And you know, it's not a trick question. I'm curious because I do agree with you that certain places
Mhm.
can become kind of almost impregnated with the essence of strong personalities and emotional energy. But how does that emotional energy become intelligence and have intent? The thing that was holding you as a child, you know, and what does it? Does it? I don't know. How does it take on
Hmm.
that?
Well, I mean, I think if you have a place, I mean, I've heard so many stories about people who have worked in old folks' homes or hospices, you know, where they have actually seen shadows jump off of people who have died, jump off of people and then go hopping down the hall, you know, looking for someone else to jump onto. So I think that a lot of people sometimes carry things with them that
Right.
they don't
Okay.
know, hitchhikers, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that we don't really know. And I think if you have a place where there's a like say an asylum or a prison camp or you know something like that, where you have a lot of maybe not so great people or people going through a lot, you know, where they have folks where, you know,
Mind's in turmoil. You know, just yeah.
it's on people, and then what happens is it jumps from person to person, or it just happens to stay there. Sometimes that's all I think an entity needs. Really, they don't really need to be invited. They're on a person, the person dies, they stay there. So I you know, not only is that person emotionally putting out a lot of heavy charged emotional like energy, you know, electricity, but whatever's on them, if there is something there, and you got to think too, a lot of these entities feed off of that negativity. So if there's a place where there's a lot of negativity, it's going to attract them like bugs to a flame. I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna go there and stay there. So
Yeah.
that when we as living people go to do that, an investigation at this asylum or at this one area where they used to have a prison camp or whatnot, and we feel entities and we hear things, I think we're feeling the last people's stuff. And I think whatever's attracted to it is either was on a person or is just attracted to that negativity and just stay there. And now we're feeling it.
Thank you. Interesting. Really. Seriously, I mean, I'm sure that people listening in chat will be intrigued, and it might be a good point to ask Les if we've got any questions. Have we, Les?
Yes, and I've got to thank you both for a great show so far tonight. We do have some questions, and some good questions. We're going to share a couple of questions for you, Marie, and I think there's a couple for Paul as well. So just bear with me on this one. Let's have a look. From Tim Brennan. Now, Tim is asking, Maria, that was an amazing account about your mum remote viewing. Have you had astral traveling experiences yourself?
As far as the astral traveling, those two experiences when I was little, those are the only two I've ever had. Interestingly, I had a really terrible neighbor here a few years back, where I'm living right now. I had a really terrible neighbor, and she was a narcissist, and she was awful, and she likened herself a witch. I don't know if she could pray herself out of a paper bag, but anyways, she thought she was a witch. And so anyways, I go to bed one night and I have this dream that she's in my face and yelling at me and screaming at me. Then the very next day, she tells me that I was in her apartment. So maybe I did astral project, who knows, but I don't really know. I don't remember it. I just remember having this horrible dream where she was in my face screaming at me and everything. And then next thing I know, she was like, "You were in my apartment last night. I saw you." Like spiritually.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
and I can kind of relate to that, Les. Seriously, when we lived at Sprotborough, we had a bad neighbour, and I've wrote about this in Night People. I haven't named them, but they've passed away now anyway. But I still wouldn't do that. And it was more Mary, my wife, to get her a hard time when I were at work and things. And I woke up at night, and he'd come through. There were double wardrobes on the wall that it was a semi-detached house that backed onto their house, and he'd come through a wardrobe. I saw him, and I'd have thought it was a dream. But when Mary got up, she said she'd seen him as well. So as crazy as your story sounds, I can kind of relate to it because I've had a similar kind of story, or experience, and I don't know what it amounts to, but yeah. Sorry, Les, by the way.
I think people can send their energy over. And I think it's sometimes, I mean, according to me and my mom and the experiences we've had, it could be involuntary. I think if you have such if you go to bed in that sort of state where you are unconscious, I guess your subconscious takes over or something takes over, and you have such strong emotions, you're going to dream about that thing. Something's going to happen. And I know for a fact that people have told me, I have felt you. And I was like, wow, that's weird, because I went to bed thinking about you. So, yeah.
It's all about the emotional state in a way, most of this, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I know I've said this before, but, and I can relate to it in the time of stress and bereavement. And a lot of people claim that they've seen the bereaved person. And it's, I suppose, because they're channeling so much energy and thought into that process. I don't know whether the bereaved person comes through or whether they can kind of project the image that they want to see. I don't know what's happening, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I had a stepmom. Her uncle passed away. She let her uncle live in her house, and Uncle Tommy, I think his name was. Anyway, he passed away, and she said that she saw him walking through the hallway one night, and he had been passed away for about a week at this point. But she was so upset, and she said that she felt like he came back to say he was okay. Another story I'll tell you really quick. My mother's sister, her name was Stevie, a nickname, and we called her Aunt Stevie. And so Aunt Stevie used to call Aunt Peggy, my mom's other sister, every
Don't rush. There's plenty of time. we can plenty of time. Just tell us slow.
So what happened was my Aunt Stevie called my Aunt Peggy every Saturday at 2 p.m. and they did this for a few years. After my Aunt Stevie passed away, Aunt Peggy called my mom and said, I got to talk to you about something. And my mom was like, what? And she goes, I think Aunt Stevie's calling me. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's gone. And she's like, no. Every Saturday at 2, she used to call me. And for years, we had our talk every day, every Saturday at 2. She said, every Saturday at 2 now, the phone rings and there's nobody on the other line.
So, I've never experienced anything like that, but there's a man I talked to who's lost his son who claims something similar happens, and later in showing next hour, because you spoke about Kachina dolls, and this is the same man. I said that he'd been on about the Kachina dolls to me. However, let's just see if Les has time to fit another couple of questions, and if that's okay, Maria.
Yeah, sure. And I've got to say, Maria, at this point, a lot of people are noticing this beautiful hat that you're wearing tonight.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, so a lot of great comments about that. And we'll have to get Paul one of those, I think.
I've cut my hair, look, I'm growing it.
Oh, yeah. Right, so I've just got a question for you, Paul, on this one. It's probably a quick answer. It's from Blue Shift. Blue Shift is asking, Paul, do you ever remember being taken on a craft or seeing any alien technology?
No. I actually saw a question in chat roll up, and I didn't know whether you were going to get to it, Les. And no, I don't. I mean, I know a lot of people do, and I've no memories of that. The visitation that I remember always took place in darkness, usually in early hours of morning. Probably, I don't know time, but probably I'm assuming between 2 and 4 o'clock. And it were on terra firma, and that's what I remember mostly. I do have a kind of dream where, and you on about brushed steel, like kind of pewter type color, and being inside something like that. But it could have been a dream. But the actual things that I perceive as being real, which I wrote about in Night People, I've got nothing, to be honest, Blue Shift. And thanks for asking question. But I can't answer it.
Okay, I think there's a question here for Maria and Space Cow. Space Cow is asking, do aliens and spirits feel different? Do aliens and spirits feel different energy-wise? So the energy is different between aliens and spirits. Do you think?
I only had one UFO encounter, and I can tell you that if you want to hear it. It was I was about 18, and my mother here, she has this kind of up until the end, kind of somewhat pleasant encounter with this gray. I mean, she was getting a tour of the ship, and it's like Teddy Bear's Picnic for her. But for me, I ended up getting accosted one night. I was about 18 years old. It was about 1995, somewhere around there. And we were in the South. And I remember my mother at this point had become a Christian. So she was going to this home church, which I hated because I hated the people. They were terrible. So I freaked out one night, and because we were walking up one night, it was in an apartment, and it was called the home church. And so anyways, she's walking, with our roommate, she's walking up to the door, and I just freaked out. I said, no, I'm not going in. I hate that place. I'm not doing it. So she was like, okay, well, fine. Just stay outside. But, try not to get killed. It's not the best in neighborhood, but if you need anything, come in, and, don't stay out if you don't feel like it. But, she got it. She was okay. So I'm standing outside on the bank of this big sort of man-made pond. And we have here in the States, we have these things called quadplexes, where basically 4 apartments kind of smushed together. And then there's like this outside patio. And I remember standing outside thinking, oh, I got to be out here for 4 hours. What am I going to do? And we didn't have cell phones and, or, the things that we have today to kind of, keep us occupied. So I'm stuck outside for 4 hours. I'm thinking, crap, what am I going to do? And I remember all of a sudden I noticed this really hideously creepy, evil feeling creep up on the back of my neck, and I thought I was going to be attacked. I'm looking for, see if there's someone about to attack me. I don't see anybody, but it's washing over me in waves, and it's all this terror. Run, danger! You're in danger! Run, get out of here! And I'm just looking all around, and I'm thinking it's me. So I'm trying to calm myself down, and I'm sitting there going, okay, it's just me, just calm down. So I remember I was trying to distract myself, and I remember looking up at the sky, thinking, that sky looks really weird, because usually where we were in the South, there's always clouds in the sky, because it was always humid and, the weather and everything. So there's always clouds. But I looked at the sky and realized there was no clouds. There was no moon. There was no stars. The sky was an unusual black. It was very felt like almost like my hat. It was like no light was coming from anywhere. It was just very felt like very flat black. And I remember thinking, that does not look right. And I remember, but then I got another rush of terror, and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm looking all around, and and then all of a sudden the next minute I noticed that I was standing on the bank of this pond, and there were, hundreds of toads croaking this, and it was so deafening you can't hear anything else. I just noticed that all of a sudden all of the toads stopped croaking like that. It was like someone had muted the planet. All of the ambient sounds that you hear, the wind blowing, cars, dogs barking, people talking, what have you, toads croaking, all of that went quiet. There was no sound. I felt like I interviewed Terry Lovelace for my podcast, and he said it's like a sound booth. I said, yes, exactly. It's like, it's deafening. It's that quiet. Again, another rush of terror. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And then all of a sudden I just happened to look up, and there's now a thin strip of clouds, not too far from where, it's not that, I could probably hit it with a stick if I threw hard enough. It wasn't that high up, but I remember seeing a thin strip of clouds, and I saw 3 lights inside the clouds, and they were twirling around in this very sort of intricate figure 8 formation. And I remember at first glance, because I'm terrified at this point, I keep feeling this rush of fear. I'm thinking something's about to jump out at me. So I remember I looked up at the clouds, and I thought, where did this cloud come from? There wasn't any clouds 2 seconds ago. All of a sudden there's a cloud. And then there was lights. Now I'm thinking that there was beams, those spotlights on the ground, whenever the beams were going up and hitting the clouds. So I thought that's what it was. And my mother, every time she saw that, she would say, oh, car dealership's having a sale. Because that's what they would do, in our little neck of the woods, our little rednecky town in the South. We, if they were having a big car, into the sale, end of the year sale. They bring up the spotlights, and they would, they have a big to do. And so my first thing was, oh, car dealership's having a sale. And I turned around to look this way to see if anyone was going to attack me. And I literally heard in my head telepathically, look at the lights again. That wasn't my thought. So I was like, what? And my head whipped around, and I saw these lights in the clouds, and I saw that they weren't hitting the clouds. They were in the cloud lights, and they were moving in this very fluid, no sound formation, just going like this. And it was reacting to my thoughts. It was reacting to my emotions. So the minute I looked at this thing, I went, that's not normal. The minute I went, hey, wait a minute, the lights stopped where they were and started going around in a perfect circle, following each other in a perfect circle. No sound again. And I remember thinking, okay. And I remember feeling immediately, that's what I'm feeling. This creepy, oh my God, this terror, that dread, that fear, that terror. It was that. And I remember looking up at that, and I heard in my head, again, telepathically, we're not supposed to be here, and we know you know it. Very taunty, almost like a schoolyard bully would come up to you and start, picking on you. That's how it felt. And I remember looking at this and saying, are you kidding me? And I got so mad that this thing thought it could pick on me, that I said, and of course, being in the church, you're taught that if you want to make something evil go away, you say in the name of Jesus. So that's what I did. I said, name of Jesus, you get out of here right now. And I started screaming at it, and the lights sped up, because the angrier I got, the more it responded. So the lights were speeding up, and it took off. And it left a little trail that if my eyes weren't peeled, I would have missed it. It was that fast. And again, no sound. So I'm panicked at this point. I run into the apartment where I don't want to be, but I don't want to be out here now. So I run into the apartment, and I guess my mother saw me. I probably looked white as a sheet. So I ran into the apartment. I found like the quietest corner, which was like a little stairwell off to the side. And I sat there and I just hugged my knees and just like in terror. And my mother was like, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I saw something." And she was like, she looked over her shoulder, like, "Okay, just don't tell everybody. We'll talk about this later." So the church meeting ended. We went back home. I told her everything because she had her own encounter. She was always really cool about that kind of stuff. So she believed me. She was like, "I believe you." She was like, "But you know, the people that we hang around, they're very Christiany. They're very kind of Jesus camp, fundamentalist Christiany people." She said, "They're going to say you brought the devil and all that stuff. Don't talk to them. Don't tell them anything." I said, "Okay." I didn't say a word to anyone. So the next meeting that we had was the very next weekend. And I remember I went in because I did not want to stay outside at this point. I was terrified. And so I'm sitting at the end of this couch in this church meeting, sulking because I didn't want to be there, but I didn't want to be outside, you know. So the parents of my ex-boyfriend, very recent ex-boyfriend, walked in. Now, these people were so fundamentalist Christian that they did not allow books or magazines or newspapers or TV shows, nothing that had, if it wasn't the Bible, it wasn't allowed in their house because they believed that you let the devil in if you do it that way. So anyway, I remember going over to their house and I had a dream catcher on my shirt, and they made me take off the shirt and they burned the shirt while they were praying. This is how religious they are. So they don't believe in UFOs. They don't believe in grays, nothing like that. So they walk in and they're clinging to each other and they look like they've seen a ghost. And everybody noticed it because it was complete departure from how they normally are. So they walk in, they sit down, and they, for the whole meeting, now we're talking 4 hours. This is a long church meeting. These people are holding on to each other, looking for all the world like they're traumatized. They've seen a ghost, just absolutely shattered. I mean, they just looked horrified. And so at the end of the meeting, someone said, "We should probably go talk to them, probably go ask them what's going on." So someone went over there and said, "Hey, are you guys okay? Do you need to talk? Do you need prayer or something?" And they immediately looked at this person, very pitiful like, and just said, "We saw something. We saw something. We saw something." And they were just, people were like, "What?" They weren't prepared for that. So someone said, "Okay, what happened to you guys? Because you guys aren't acting right. What's going on?" And they literally said in their own words, the same night that I had seen the lights, that same night, of course, nobody said anything to anybody. So they drove home and they had further to travel than I did. Where they lived, and I know I went there, was very heavily suburban, residential. It was heavily populated. It wasn't rural at all. There was tons of people around. This was a very busy neighborhood that they lived in. They said that they were driving home, and on their way home, they were about halfway home. They said that something very heavy and metallic landed on the roof of their truck and tried to pick up their truck for at least a half a mile. They said that they prayed, because they were Christiany and that's what they did. So they prayed and prayed and prayed. This thing finally unlatched itself and I guess flew away. I don't know. But they said that this thing tried to kidnap them with while they were in their truck. And they had a tiny little truck, but they said this thing tried to kidnap them. And they said that the thing landed on the roof of their truck like a heavy metal trash can. It just landed with a clang, and they were like, "What?" They looked up, and then all of a sudden they noticed the front end of their truck was starting to lift up, and they were like, "No!" And they started praying, and eventually this thing gave up.
It's incredible. Yep. And on that note, Maria, we're going to go to a 3-minute break. I think, are we, Les? Just
yes, yes, and great show so far. And we've got. So if you've got any questions, people, please pop them in the chat for Maria or Paul. And we will ask those questions after our commercial break of 3 minutes. So get your chalk ices out, get your beers, your lagers, popcorn, and for the posh people, get your martinis out. And yeah, 3 minutes, guys. We'll be back.
Join the stellar lineup of renowned speakers and TV personalities at the Awakening Expo, June 24th to 26th, 2022, Blackpool, UK, featuring Eric von Daniken, Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, Andrew Collins, Steve Mera, Billy Carson, Dr. Teresa Bullard-Wyke, Johnny Enoch, Paul Sinclair, Maria Wheatley, Andrew Goff, Barry Fitzgerald, Hugh Newman, and Richard Doty. Immerse yourself in 3 days of mind-blowing presentations, Q&As, panels, meet your favorite speakers, and much, much more at the Awakening Expo, June 24th to 26th, 2022, Blackpool, UK. Get your tickets now at awakeningufo.com.
Well, I hope everybody's refreshed, drinks replenished, chalk ices or what have you, popcorn, because we are back with the show. And take it away, guys.
Yeah, thanks, great. And I've really enjoyed what Maria's telling us and her own life experiences and other bits that kind of ring true. I mean, a lot of stuff you're saying, Maria, it sounds absolutely crazy, but when viewed, when viewed,
No, I agree with you.
but when viewed as a collective alongside other people's stories and encounters, you just realize how normal it is when people are experiencing this paranormal. You said that you stood at the side of the pond. There's loads of toads croaking.
Toads, yeah.
Yeah. And then everything descended into what I call the lower silence. Everything just like in a vacuum. You just went silent. Mm-hmm. That kind of scenario goes across the board for lots and lots of different types of unexplained phenomena. But then another interesting thing that you said a voice said to you, "Look at the lights." When the lights spin in the clouds, you heard telepathically a voice say that. And when we're looking into a case close to where I live at Wilsthorpe, what we call the Wilsthorpe incident, the old couple who saw the UFOs over the sea, it was the old lady that saw them first.
Mhm.
She went into her porch and thought it were unusually lit outside because there's nothing but the North Sea, no street lights or anything. She assumed that somebody had left a porch light on. It were a shared flat, a shared light between the flats. And she thought they'll turn it off. And she stepped back into a living room, interestingly, and she said, and a voice said to me, go back and have another look. So your crazy words, look at the light, this lady's crazy words. You know, myself and Mary, years ago when we were, I think I'd have been 19, she was 20. I'm not going to gory details, but my mum and dad used to go and have a beer every night, and we're sat watching TV in front of a little gas fire, and there's a TV program on. I know what it was now. It were Faulty Towers, and probably you maybe never watched it, but it were Faulty Towers.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a big fan.
And my mum and dad had gone out, and I said to Mary, "Shall we go upstairs?" And you know, yeah, well, we're all human.
Yeah.
And a voice said between us, "Why?" Looked at her, she looked at me. I didn't say it. She didn't say it. We stayed there. We didn't move.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so just quirky story. I know you know, but if we don't
So
relay,
do you think you guys had an alien chaperone of some kind?
no idea. But if you don't relay these stories, nobody would ever know about this voice that spoke to you, or the elderly lady at Woolsthorpe, or the voice that said between us, "Why?" We both heard it, and you're not unique. I'm not. I think people the world over have got these stories, just like that couple who were deeply religious, who had that experience. They probably wanted to suppress it and not talk about it. Maybe, I don't know. I bet you they didn't I bet it didn't change them. I bet they went even more deeper into the religion.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because you know, I grew up in that fundamentalist Jesus camp, Christian-y kind of cult thing, and I have seen a lot of Christians, you know, not saying anything bad about Christians. I still believe in God and Jesus and everything. I'm just not a churchy person, but you know, I saw way too many times Christians going through hardships or having something like this happen. They immediately blame themselves, and they think, oh, I let the devil in somehow. I didn't go to church that one Sunday. I slept in, or I didn't go to that Bible study, or I didn't read my scriptures, or I didn't pray this morning. So I let the devil in. They teach you in church to be very hyper vigilant of, you got to stay soaked in the Bible, you know, church, Bible, church, Bible. And if you dare go talk to anyone who is not religious and, you know, it kind of indulge in secularism in any way, then you're going to let the devil in. And so I firmly believe, because people ask me many, many times, what do you think happened to that couple? Because I didn't see them after that. That was like the last meeting we ever went to, thankfully. And so I remember thinking many, many times back to that point where did they, because this was out of the box of what they told themselves. They, in their world, it's only Jesus, it's only God and the devil and angels, and that's it. That's all there is. So when something out of that happens to someone, it really shakes them to their core. So I often wonder, did this make them go, hey, maybe there's something out there besides all this? Or did they go deeper into the religion and say, oh my gosh, we let the devil in, we got attacked, and that's how they processed it, and that's how they lived their lives? They probably did, knowing how religious they were already. You know, they probably just got worse. I mean, to me, my mother and I had always been very open, because we always had this other life, you know, where we experienced so many entities. So we knew that there was more than just this, you know, for us. We knew there was a lot going on out there. And for me, I don't know what these beings, I didn't see any craft. I didn't see any grays. I didn't see anything. What I saw were lights that telepathically were able to communicate with me, because I was thinking my own thoughts at that point. I dismissed the lights, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I was just like, yeah. But to me, it felt for all the world like it was, I joke at this point, where it feels like they were a couple like teenagers that got dad's car, and it was like, yeah, let's go bother some earthlings tonight. You know, it felt like they were coming to earth just to pick on somebody. And that's kind of, you know, I just happened to be there. And a lot of people ask me, they go, well, you know, did you have like a Men in Black encounter afterwards, or did they come back or anything? And I said, no, I think I scared them to death, because I think I kind of, You know, have you ever seen that viral video of that guy that's dancing in front of the buffalo because he thinks it's a big dumb creature, and then the buffalo takes off after him? I was the buffalo, I think, in that scenario. I think I was the one that's just sort of screaming at them and scared them so bad they took off. And I think they put me on some sort of intergalactic do not call list, because I have never had any encounters since then. No Men in Black encounters, nothing. I think they crossed me off the list, like, yeah, we're not going back there. So, but yeah.
Well, thank you, and we'll no doubt we want to save a few questions, so we'll not deal with questions just at the moment. But I almost started laughing when you were talking, and I had to stop myself because I looked at questions there, and Tim Brennan says it. Well, your mum and dad's intercom, Paul, and I could just you know, but you know when the way the words rise. But let's move on. So where do you want to take this now? Do we want to go ghosts, poltergeists, any kinds of experiences like that?
Yeah, I mean, I had speaking of dreams, because we were talking about dreams on the break. Speaking of dreams, I had this very odd encounter one time. I was probably about 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there. And I remember I went to bed one night, and around this time, I became really obsessed with World War II and watching every documentary I could. I don't know why. And I found out that I had family that had fought in World War II. So I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe I'm picking up on this. But I've heard these kinds of stories before where people go along and then all of a sudden they're obsessed with something. Like they just become obsessed with a certain time period. And then they find out that their relative was from that time period. Something's going on there. But I remember one night, or morning, actually, I had this dream where I woke up and I was in a bunker, some sort of building that was all gray. I looked like I was in a bathroom that was makeshift cell. The toilet was kicked over. The sink was broken in two, and it was all disarray. It was all mucked up, and everything was all nasty and gross. And I remember I had bars on the doors, and I remember like waking up, and I immediately felt different. I did not feel like I was in my own body. I didn't feel like I was Marie in a scenario. I knew I was someone else. So I remember I had to feel, I'm like, I'm not me. I'm someone else. Why am I here? It didn't feel like a dream. I felt like I was dropped into another time period. I mean, that's how it felt. And I remember I heard in my head, something said, reach into your pocket and pull out something. There's something in there that's going to tell you who you are. So I reached into my pocket and I pulled out a piece of a Bible scripture. It was from like Isaiah 54 or something like that. But it was a picture. It was a piece of a Bible, a picture, a page. And then I remember looking at this mirror that just happened to be on the wall that wasn't knocked off and, broken or whatever. And I remember seeing my face, but like an overlay of a man's face. So I was a man. And for some reason I was imprisoned in this makeshift cell. I remember looking out, and I remember the bars were made of rebar. And I remember it was like a makeshift, like they threw it together, they stuck it on the door, and there I was. So I was holding onto these bars, and I remember hearing 2 German soldiers walking down the hallway with a group of kids. I remember they walked right in front of my cell, and I remember asking them, I said, what are you guys doing? Because I grabbed them through the bar. So what are you doing? And they said, leave us alone. You know your business. They led these kids into this room, and there was this huge metal door that they latched shut. It then occurred to me, this was a gas chamber. I was in some sort of prison camp in Germany, somewhere around there. And I absolutely lost it. I came unglued. I grabbed them and I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the German soldier said, this has to be done. Leave us alone. And I was reaching through the bars trying to grab them. I said, please, please, please take me instead. Take me instead. Please let the kids go. Just take me instead. I'll happily go in their place. Please just let the kids go. And these soldiers just were laughing, joking, walking away from me. And I'm screaming. I'm reaching through the bars. I'm trying to pry the bars off. I have never felt more hopeless, more helpless in my life. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs, please, please, please take me instead. I then wake up. And when I wake up, I'm talking about, I felt like I landed with a thud in my body. I remember I sat up, and I remember I had a mirror on the other side of my bed, you know, on the other wall. And I remember I looked, and my hair was soaked with tears, just drenched. My face was soaked with tears. My shirt was soaked with sweat and tears. I had been fighting. And I still remember, though, when I woke up, I landed with a thud. I could feel the drop. And I woke up like this, and just, you know, so that was.
So do you think you lived a relative's past experience? And
I think so.
Or are we living in different time frames, and that's actually happening on another layer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just curious what you think happened.
It could have been either one of those. To this day, I still don't know, because it was as real life. This was not a dream. You know, you wake up from a dream and you're kind of groggy and you're like, well, that was weird. This was not a dream. I literally woke up with a thud, woke right up, and was like, like I had just come back from someplace. So, again, it could have been a relative. I could have, because I believe, our DNA holds, I think, the trauma of our ancestors. And I, being of Native American ancestry, I feel that. My mother did too. She said, I feel like I'm carrying the burdens of my ancestors. This was before you talked about DNA, but my mom knew. She said, I feel like I'm carrying the burdens and the sadness and the horrors of my ancestors in my cells. And she would do this. She said, I feel like it's in my body. I feel like it's a part of me, and I feel like I'm carrying what they went through with me. And interestingly, so yeah, I mean, I feel like we maybe possibly could relive ancestors' memories that maybe have gotten trapped in our own bodies. Who knows?
On a much sort of lesser scale, because I've never felt that, but I have sort of smiled and said things to myself and said things to other people, and almost felt like it's my dad saying it. Do you know what I mean? And I imagine that's just his mannerisms that I can remember. But it feels, you feel that part of being part of that person, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure other people have felt it to a lesser or more degree, much more, because that's the only attachment that I can. There's odd times, and I can't think of anything offhand, but it's happened, and I thought, felt like my dad. That do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you feel kind of like you were maybe possessed for a second. You know what I mean?
Whether it's possessed or whether it's when you were talking earlier of like it's almost in the DNA. It's a trait, and it's
almost like a tape that plays all the time.
Like some kind of memory, genetic code that you're remembering. I don't know, but interesting nevertheless. So we're working our way through the book. And it might be a good time to tell people about the book and where they can get the book.
Well, you can get it on Flying Disc Press. Philip Mantle, as you know, he has a website, so you can get it there. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it pretty much anywhere online that you can get books. And basically, the reason why I started the book, because I'm not, I've had people tell me throughout the years, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, no. And so I never really thought about writing a book. And then, what happened was a few years back, I started really listening to Paranormal podcast, and all of my experiences I had kind of pushed off to the side and thought, whatever, I've been through stuff. And I didn't really think about it, because I think for many years, I just tried to survive it, And I remember hearing a lot of people talking about their experiences and how they're still suffering with trauma. And I started to realize that there is such a thing as paranormal PTSD. There is such a thing. I believe it 100%. I mean, my first guest on my podcast was Terry Lovelace. As you guys know, probably he's the fellow that experienced still experiences a lot of alien abductions and encounters. And the incident at Devil's Den was the main event, really. But he is still to this day, he's in his 70s and he still can't sleep with the light off. He's got he can't walk through an open field. He's just still suffering from the effects of that. And I believe that paranormal PTSD is a thing. And a lot of therapists don't take that seriously. They immediately write someone off when they say, well, I've had a abduction or a paranormal encounter. And, I think they need to be taken seriously. Even if you don't personally believe in the paranormal, realize that this person has suffered something that has registered in their brain as a trauma. So if they hadn't gone through anything, I don't think that trauma would be there. That imprints upon our our psyche, our mind. So 100%, I believe that paranormal PTSD is a thing. But what happened was I kept hearing other people's stories, and my heart was breaking, because every time I heard someone recount their story, they would always say, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. I know I'm not crazy. Or you probably think I'm crazy. And I kept hearing that, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, we need to normalize paranormal encounters. We need to normalize talking about paranormal encounters, and taking what Terry calls the giggle factor out of these things, and start to really open up more about these, because I realized there's a lot more people. When you go through your own thing, you tend to get isolated. But then when you start listening to the podcasts and the shows, and you start talking to people, you start realizing almost everybody has had some sort of unexplainable encounter. And we need to start talking about these things more without fear of judgment, and say, yeah, I know what I saw, and just be very matter of fact about it. Kind of claim that space and say, no, I know what I saw. I saw something, or I heard something, or I felt something. Don't know what it is, and that's okay. You don't have to know, but we need to start talking about these things more. So I started my podcast because I wanted to provide a safe space for people to discuss these things without any fear of judgment. And you can do it anonymously. I don't care, but I really believe that talk therapy is helpful. And I've had a lot of people come to me and say, wow, thanks for letting me talk to you, because I feel so much better now. I had that all pent up for years, and I didn't trust, what I saw or what I felt until I started talking to you and other people. And now I feel better. I felt like, okay, I'm not crazy. And then I realized, once I started my podcast, I realized that I had a lot of stories that not a lot of people knew about. And I kind of, like I said, I kind of dismissed things on my own and just tried to survive it. And then when I really sat down, I really realized nobody knows me, and they don't really know my stories. And I think maybe it's time to write that book. And so I sat down, and, I have ADHD. It's really hard for me to sit down and kind of focus on one thing, but I did it. I wrote the book. And as I'm going through my life chronologically, I've realized that, holy crap, I've been through some stuff, I've been through a lot of stuff. And I didn't really realize. So I had, writing this book was very therapeutic for me, because I was able to get it all out, and I was able to really come to terms with all of the stuff that I've been through.
So you only just touched on the fact that the book's available through Flying Disc Press.
Yeah.
And so that will be available on Amazon, is it?
Yes, Amazon, and pretty much anywhere where you can, get a book online. You can just type in Boogeyman Chronicles, and I'm sure Amazon will probably pop up, but I think it's other places too.
Excellent. And I think everybody knows where they can obtain my books. We have the website, truthproof.uk, and the Kindle version of the book is also available on Amazon. The paperback's on the website. So we've sort of covered that part of it. So how far have we got through the book now, Maria, as regards your encounters? Because before we end this, and I want to leave it till end, Les will probably have a few questions, but I just want to ask you your views on the cryptid phenomena, but we can do that in 5 minutes time, 10 minutes time, if you've got anything else to add to the book.
Yeah. So, as far as the book, I mean, I'll leave you with one last really scary encounter, the very last one that I had actually.
Okay.
So after living in the South, I moved to California, moved to Los Angeles, and I'm here, got my own apartment. I'm doing my thing. I'm, trying to, be a filmmaker. I'm kind of doing my thing. So all of a sudden one night, I noticed I moved into this apartment, and the apartment felt it felt a little off, but it felt mostly okay. So I was like, okay. So I moved in, and things were fine. I had no paranormal encounters, nothing really that I would call creepy or disturbing. And I had these really lovely neighbors from across the way. They were a lovely African-American family, and I just adored them. They were very sweet. They fought like cats and dogs, but they were always nice to me. So anyways, they were super sweet, and they had very good energy, but they moved, and I was really sad. And then all of a sudden, this couple with a kid and some dogs, they moved in, and they were just, their energy was so awful. They were mean to their dogs. They were mean to their kid. And I was just like, that right there, I automatically hated them. But they were just nasty people. They just didn't have very good energy. As soon as they moved in, I started to feel like I was not alone in my apartment. And I would go about my, day or night, and I would just feel like someone was in my apartment. And I felt it really strong when I would leave my apartment, because I had 3 dogs at this point. So I was walking my dogs, and I would come back to my apartment, and I wouldn't go far. I would just go around the corner, and I come back and I felt like someone had been in my apartment that was not supposed to be there. And I would scour the place. I would look under beds. I would look in the closet, in the shower, shower behind the shower curtain. I was even looking in cupboards. I was looking everywhere because I felt for all the world like someone was in there, and I couldn't get over it. And I was at my wit's end. Then I remember I would be watching TV at night, and I had a little deaf doggy that used to look at this one corner because I kept feeling something from this one corner. I kept seeing something, but I was like, no, 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 I'm not gonna think about it. He kept looking at this one corner and like tilting his head like he had seen something. And I was like, crap, there's something here. So a few nights later, I'm sitting on my bed and I'm playing with my dog, and there's no TV on. There's no nothing. There's no lights. There's just one little tiny light, just that. And then all of a sudden I remember I just happened to look up, and all of a sudden I see this wispy shadow form. It just kind of comes together. I only see about this much of it. And then it just glides across the floor for a couple of feet, and then it just wisps away. And I saw that, and it was the first time I'd ever seen something. I was in my early 30s, and I panicked. I freaked out. So I grabbed the dogs and I took off for the longest walk of my life. And I stood outside like, what am I going to do? I got to go back up there and sleep, And so I was pretty terrified, but I went up there and I just kind of said a prayer through the place, and I opened up all the windows. Freezing cold, but I opened up all the windows and I said, whoever you are, get out. You don't belong here. And I felt a little bit better. Still slept with the lights on though. And so anyway, I remember this is where I really kind of had to come to terms with being a medium, and the fact that, I could help other people and I felt comfortable helping other people, but here I was with my own situation. And I didn't quite get how do I handle this for myself? So I remember sitting on the end of my bed because I could feel this thing standing right there. And I thought, okay, here this thing is, I got to talk to it. So I looked at it point blank and I said, who are you? What do you want? What is it? And why are you here? And I got the impression it was a female. Now, I don't watch scary movies, but this thing looked for all the world like the girl from The Ring with the hair in the face and the hospital gown on. She looked just like that. And I thought, okay, I've seen too many TV shit. Like, I've seen like a commercial or something. And I live in Los Angeles, so I figured I probably saw a billboard or something with it. So I just excused. I'm like, oh, I'm crazy with that. But I started talking to this entity, and it was a woman, and it felt like she was attached to the woman that just moved in across the way. She was like a distant aunt or something, but she had been put in a asylum. And it felt like, one thing I've noticed when you are doing medium work is that if someone is mentally disabled in life, after they die, they still have that thing where it's hard for them to communicate. They can't just talk and say, yeah, I'm this and I'm here for this reason. It's a struggle to try to feel what they're saying, to try to make some, it's the same thing as, if they can't communicate in life, they can't do it in death. So it's very hard for them. But what I got was she was committed to an asylum of some kind, and she was pretty much left there in the 30s and 40s. She was just left there. And for some reason, she's following this one girl, I guess maybe a distant aunt or something like that. But that's what I felt. And so, but I told her, I said, well, I don't know what you're doing here. I can't help you. So you need to go. But she, for some reason, really wanted to be near me. I don't know why. I still to this day don't know why. So a few nights later, I have a friend named Joe, and he was kind of transient at the moment. And he was like, well, can I come stay on your couch? And I said, of course. So I picked him up, brought him back. He's sleeping on the couch, and he's just about to pass out. He's very tired. And I said, okay, I'm going to go lay down in my room. And if you need anything, raid the fridge, go to the bathroom. There's a bathroom, blah, blah, blah. So I showed him around, and then I went to my room. I no sooner got my covers up to my chin when all of a sudden I heard, Marie, Marie, just this blood curdling scream from the living room. And I thought, oh my God, he's being attacked or something. It sounded like he was literally being attacked. I never heard anyone scream so terrifying. So I'm tripping over dogs. I'm trying to get out of the covers. I'm trying to get out of bed, and I rush out. I run to the living room where he's at, and I said, what happened? What? And he's sitting on the edge of the couch, grabbing his throat, gasping for air. I said, what happened? He goes, I was just attacked. And I turned around and looked at the front door. The front door's got 3 locks on it. All the windows are locked. What the heck, And I said, what are you talking about? Nobody's in here. And he said, no. He said, when you left, I felt the energy of the room change. He said, I looked up. I opened my eyes because he was laying down on the couch. He looked up and he said, the girl from The Ring? And I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, I saw her. She was floating above me. And immediately I told her, look, I'm not here to hurt Marie, because he felt like she was trying to protect me. He said, I'm not here to hurt Marie. And he said that he immediately felt hands around his throat, and he felt he just was being choked and he couldn't breathe. And he said with the last little breath that he had, he screamed my name, and he was let go. And he said that she turned around and flew out the window, just like disappeared out the window. So
Frightening experience.
yeah.
What was that your motive for letting him sleep on the couch? Just
surprisingly, he stayed. I really thought after an experience like that, because I sat there and I talked to him, and I said a prayer through the place. I mean, I was mad. I was like, you bother me, but don't attack my friends. And so I was really upset. And I said, are you okay? Do you want me to take you to a hotel or something? And he was like, no, I'll be fine. And he stayed there. He slept right there again. Like, I don't know how he could have done that. But anyway, he was fine. But yeah, but he saw exactly what I saw. And I didn't tell him a thing. I did. When I feel things, I kind of keep it to myself. I didn't say anything to him, but he saw exactly what I saw.
Right. So, jumping from that. So having experience and knowledge of Native Americans, indigenous people, what are their views on, or what are your views based on what they've told you of the skinwalkers and the cryptid type phenomena?
Well, as far as cryptids, every tribe is different. They all have their different names. There's, a skinwalker, there's a ravenwalker in Cherokee culture, in mine. And then, my friend who is Lakota, they call them bear walkers. So,
they call them what?
Bear walkers.
Bear walkers.
Yeah, there's different names for a shape-shifting witch. That's basically what it is. It's a shape-shifting witch. It's someone who decides they want to follow this path in magic, and they do that, and they can harness some really interesting powers. I mean, I've heard a lot of skinwalker stories, and you'd be surprised. People who hear the majority of skinwalker stories, they think that skinwalkers are just these mangy beasts that run alongside cars in the desert and Arizona or something, or New Mexico or Utah. And that's not the case. The skinwalker could be that your next door neighbor. You would never know it. They can, they can be the businessman. They can be this or that. Skinwalkers are much more prevalent than people realize. You got to realize that, yeah, they take a form of a creature or a monster, but the true essence is a human. They're just a shape-shifting witch. And so, that's every tribe is different. They all have different names. So.
Do they perceive it as being done by some kind of ritual or
yeah, there's rituals, there's whatever. Again, I can't really talk about that kind of stuff, because I mean, if I divulge any kind of secrets, I'll be killed, you know what I mean? So you got to be careful when you're dealing with skinwalkers. But yeah, I mean, shapeshifters, skinwalkers, there's different levels of those things, and there's different rituals that you would do to become one.
So for the people that think that these things are probably living and breathing entities in deep forests and secluded places, the experience that you've got is that they're not. Would that be right?
What do you? Well, I mean, you have the skinwalker, which is a shape-shifting witch, and then you have dogmen, who are very much real, and they're just, they got the same sort of thing as a Bigfoot. And like I said, like we were just discussing before, every tribe has a different view of Bigfoot. With Cherokee, it's mostly like benevolent sort of big brother of the forest, kind of like, you keep a healthy distance, but they are there to help you. There's a lot of people that have a lot of good stories about Bigfoots where they were in trouble and one came to their aid. And then I told you about the Tlingit people who, Bigfoot is a spirit, of evil spirit. And whenever someone goes missing in the tribe, they always attribute that to this, Bigfoot type spirit creature. So.
Oh, well, thank you for your views on that, Maria. And we've got about, 10, 15 minutes left. So I think if Les has any more questions, I would like to go to them, and because we never get a chance to answer most of people's questions. Is microphone on and working, Les? Are we good?
We are good to go. Let's see what's in the questions, what's in the chat tonight. And thanks for all the submissions tonight on the questions. I'm going to try and read most of them out. I've got a question here from, it's from our moderator, Deborah. So Debbie is asking, has Maria dealt with any demonic entities during her investigations, and how did she deal with it?
Yeah. Demons are very interesting. You can feel them from the street. If they're in a house, you can feel it from the street. They very much have a presence of like, go away, get out of here. This is my place, And I've talked to quite a few people on these podcasts where we've, seen how people who were doing Ouija board stuff or any sort of divination where they didn't quite know what they were doing would invite these things in and would have, trouble getting rid of them, because once you give them permission, you have to then tell them to go away, so a lot of people will open those doors, bring things in, and then not shut that door, not send that thing away. I've had several dealings with demons. They're, all from like the really big guys to like the smaller ones, and I do have a funny story. I don't have time to tell it, but it's in the book about there was some sort of entity that was demonic, and my mother and I both had the same encounter with it. So it was in our house, and it was quite, now we can look back and laugh at it, but at the same time, it was kind of shocking. But yeah, I've dealt with demons. My mother, when she became a Christian, she started praying for people, and she started to do exorcisms for people. And I've seen a lot of stuff going on with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and let's have a look. And I guess that's, Deborah's was a double-sworded question there, because she goes on to say, are these the scariest investigations you have ever undertaken, the demonic ones?
Yeah, those are probably the scariest, because they're powerful, and they don't care if they kill you, and they will hitchhike, and they will come into your house, and they'll bother you, and they're terrifying.
Interesting thing that I picked up on then, you're talking about your mum. She did a full shift, really, because she was more into the spiritual side and the perception, and then she went to Christianity.
Yeah. That was something that I wasn't too happy with, because I didn't feel like it was going to be a good thing for her, but she kind of got burnt out. She said she got tired of telling people she was gonna, they were gonna get a new car, or they were gonna get married or something. And she said she felt very burnt out. I think she really just needed a break. But unfortunately, she had a friend who was a Seventh-day Adventist who came over and told her about the Bible and all this stuff. And then my mom became a Christian, and she did a lot of good when she was a Christian. She prayed for a lot of people, and a lot of people got better, and they got free from a lot of nasty stuff. But at the same time, I felt like it really put her in a box and kept her from, achieving her full potential, because she was really going places. And
did it suppress then what she'd done before?
Yeah, going back to the neurodivergent angle, I didn't get a chance to mention this, but there is a direct correlation between a very notable one about neurodivergent people, meaning autistic and ADHD and whatnot, and people who have ESP or experience, precognitive dreams and paranormal encounters. And my mother and I were both those things. And You have to realize and I told her this many, many times, because the churchy people would tell her, no, you can't talk to, you can't, it's the same gift or ability, but with a different label on it. The Christians are going to call it this, the new age people are going to call it this, and blah, blah, blah is going to call it this. It's the same ability. I kept telling her, I said, Mom, it's in us. I said, that ability is in us. It's our electrical wiring. This is just how we function. We have antennas to where we can see and feel and hear these things. And there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing of the devil. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It has nothing to do with spirituality at all. This is electrical. The way we can pick up on stuff is electrical, I feel. I feel like it's very, very much science-based. But yeah, I feel like it really put her in a place where she wasn't able to really fully grasp, who she was at this point. And I think it really derailed her.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, go to another question. Go on, Les.
Yeah, well, I've got a question from myself, actually, Maria. And, you talked about your mother now, and the indigenous people that your ancestry is. How far back in ancestry can you actually go? Can you go to your grandparents, great-grandparents, to know if these experienced similarities?
Now, the thing is, I don't know, because my mother's parents died before she was her mother died when she was 7. Her father died when she was about 16. So she never really got a chance to talk with them. So I'm not really sure. I know my mother's father is Cherokee and Petey, and I really don't know what he went through. I know he was very, very sensitive, and really had a hard time in life. He died an alcoholic and whatnot. But she told me that my mother told me that ever since she was a little kid, she used to stay at a old farmhouse in South Carolina with some friends, and she said that she could feel stuff there then, like ghosts and whatnot. So this is something that I'm sure goes really far back. I wish I could talk to my family members, but again, my parents were adopted, and we ended up finding the family way too late. So there's no way I can really go back and talk to anyone and talk to them. I wish I could, but yeah, I don't know as far as like how far the paranormal encounters go back.
I'm going to sneak another quick one in here, Maria. And you talked earlier about the meeting place in the hall where you stood outside near the lake with the frogs and you saw the lights in the sky. Now, you said you had a little bit more about you then, and you thought, well, you did you say you got a telepathic voice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I saw the UFOs, when those lights were...
Yeah, the UFOs.
Yeah, that was telepathic.
Do you think, Maria, and this is just coming from my angle, do you think the UFOs in that sky at that time, in this crowded neighbourhood, they actually sought you out to give you, to send you a message? Was it focused on you entirely?
Yeah, it was. But the thing is, it kind of had that feeling. Like I said, it had the feel that it was like the kids that took the parents' car out, and they're just looking out. They're just looking to cause trouble. Those kids that go cruising and they're like, yeah, let's go bother somebody. And it kind of felt like I was at the right place at the right time, and they just tried to mess with me because I was, standing out there. But and again, it's like, people say, well, you should have some sort of hereditary encounters because your mother did. And yet I don't remember any sort of grays. I don't have any dreams. I don't have any encounters. Like I said, I think they put me on some sort of intergalactic do not call list because I have not had anything except for this one encounter where it was they accosted me, they were just right there. They were, threatening me. So again, I don't really know what their purpose was other than just it was literally like, hey, look at me, and there was no message. There was no, love and light, be a good human, be a good earthling, take care of the planet. There was nothing like that. It was just like, it was kind of like some dude messing with you at a bar. You go into a pub or a bar and there's some dude in there that thinks he's big and bad, and he kind of, shoulders you. It kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like I was being picked on.
Okay. And I'm going to go with a question from Valiant Looney. Maria, I know we talked about the cryptids earlier. Maria, have you had any experiences with the cryptids?
No, nothing so far. Like I said, I've had every other kind of experience, but no Bigfoots and no dogmen. I would love to have an encounter. I mean, not close to close. I mean, face to face, close that up like that. I mean, if I saw one across the way, I'd be like, cool. I saw a Bigfoot. I got to add that to the list. But I haven't had any encounters with them. So yeah.
I've got a great question from Space Cow, and it is this: Maria, was any of your recall for the book, was it life altering?
It was, as I sat here and went through my life chronologically and wrote down every little thing, I had to stop quite a few times and go, wow, oh my gosh, I really have been through some stuff. And it was, it kind of reframed my life a bit to where it was like, okay, I think this is going to be something that I'm going to have to come to terms with officially, because I've come to terms with it in pieces throughout my life, but now I think it's finally come full circle now that I've written the book and I've kind of gotten everything out, and I'm kind of putting myself, because I'm a private person, so for me to kind of get out there and be like, hey, here I am, and this is what I've been through, and believe it or not, and put myself out there and say, hey, I'm here to help people. I'm here to guide people. I have people write me all the time, email me and say, hey, I've been through this. Can you help me? And I'm like, of course, or hey, I think my house is haunted. Can you help me? So I welcome all of that. I mean, it may take me a week or so to get to you, but I always tell people I'm here to help, so.
When you first started speaking about your own experiences, I mean, more openly, did it lose your friends? Did you lose friends through it, or
no,
did your circle of friends already know?
No, all of my friends were quite intrigued. I think nowadays people are much more intrigued about this kind of thing. So if they find out you're a medium or that you have experiences, immediately they're like, oh my God, I gotta talk to you. So if anything, I've gotten more friends,
Okay, thank you.
I got a good question from Curious Kitty. Maria, how do your experiences affect your understanding of God?
It to me, I believe that there's a God. I believe Jesus. I believe in all of that. But I believe that, Jesus performing miracles. I always tell Christians this, and it kind of throws them. But Jesus performing miracles and people getting healed and all of that, and Jesus, teleportation or whatever, he was like in different places, that's the paranormal as well. It's just another branch on the same tree. You've got your UFOs, you've got your shadow people, you've got your Jesus miracles. You know what I mean? I really believe that is, angels, demons, all of that stuff, that's just another branch of the same tree, of the paranormal tree. And so for me, it just adds another layer of things, that there's a lot of stuff out there that it maybe is beyond the realm. I'm not saying beyond the realm of God, but you know what I mean? There's God, Jesus, and everything that you're taught in church. And then there's this other stuff. And so it makes me kind of more wondrous about those things. Like, how can these things exist? What are they? Because when you go to church, UFOs, cryptids, anything like that, it's always demonic. It's always the devil. And it's like, well, maybe it isn't. Maybe they're their own entities, and where did they come from, and why are they here, and are they separate from God? You know what I mean? We have these these grays abducting people and telling them about different dimensions, and you know what I mean? So the universe is so vast. So to me, I think it almost raises more questions than answers about God. Would he allow these things? Why does he allow these things? Why are these grays able to talk about our souls and mess with that? You know what I mean? You kind of wonder about those things.
It's so true, really. When you hear the things in the Bible, I was brought up in a church school, and the miracles and the things that happened, and like you said, Jesus being in different places after he'd passed away, after the crucifixion, and that's accepted and that's believed, and it's almost believed. It's blind faith. I'm sorry if it offends some people, but it's blind faith. At least we're questioning. I can look at the things that have happened to me, and I can think to myself, I haven't really got a clue what these things were. I'm reluctant to call them aliens because I really don't know what they were. Yeah. After all, we're only dealing with words. But ultimately, and what you've just put there, or what you've just said there about the Christianity and the aliens and the other paranormal stuff, it's all part of the same thing, in my opinion. We're all praying to the same God. If we've got all these factions of religion throughout the world, and I think probably ultimately it's culture and different nations' belief systems that just shape that God to how they want it to be. And
exactly.
same what we're doing with the UFO, the alien stroke scenario. But I better not labour too long on that, and Les might want to get another question in. Sorry, Maria.
No, it's okay.
Yes.
No, you're absolutely right about that. Like we said, as far as cultures, that's how they see God. That's how they frame it within their culture. And same thing with the indigenous Americans. You have this culture seeing a Bigfoot in this light, and then you have this other tribe seeing this Bigfoot in another light. So it's all in what their filter is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another question, and just kind of following on from what your experiences as a child, Maria, when you said that you had the whisperings in your ear, you had the pressure, you saw the black shadows, etc. And so Space Cow is asking, Maria, did you notice any of them have a smell like sulfur, negative ions, etc.?
I did one time remember I was in church. This isn't even in the book. This is a little freebie. I remember I was in church and I felt something blow in my face. Now, no one is around me. I'm sitting on the very end of this one pew. Everyone else is over here. And I'm sitting there waiting for them to get talking because I just want to go eat. And I remember I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I felt something blow in my face. And it was the most rancid, evil, horrible, hideous smell I have ever smelled. So if that was something demonic coming at me, I don't know, but I smelled something really, really bad. It smelled like the worst breath in the world. It smelled just like from the pit of hell. It really was terrible. And again, and I just kind of looked around and I just kind of slowly moved over, to where everyone else was at. And I just was like, oh my God, what was that? As far as smells, not too many, just that one.
Yeah, I've got a question here, Paul. Sorry, I'll just get this last question out, and then I'll let you finish off the show with Maria. It's I think this is a compliment, Maria. It's from V. McCrinnan. Hi, Maria. I've seen your sweet face in a reoccurring dream. Hugs from Bristol. I'm on the spectrum with you. So I think it's a backhanded compliment there.
Yeah.
Maria.
V's a great guy, and I did see him type that up, so it could have been sent with good intent.
And I can't pronounce the last two words, Paul. Can you see that?
I can't see it now, but it's all good.
Is it Mitikalu Oishi?
Well, thank you
Maria,
very much for that compliment. I appreciate it. Greetings from
great.
Los Angeles.
Super people in chat, tonight, and I can never get through all the names, but we've got Lorraine in, we've had Pat in, Space Cow, wonderful name, and and Deborah's done as moderation, and Maria, 2 hours have flown. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed.
Yeah, it has. I could go on another couple hours, but if people need to reach me, as far as need me for an investigation or to help with some sort of medium work, Boogeyman Chronicles at outlook.com. Feel free to write me. Like I said, it might take me about a week or so to get to you, but if you need help, let me know. And it's been a real pleasure. I mean, like I said, I can't believe 2 hours has gone by. I could definitely talk for longer.
Well, thank you very much. So from myself, Paul, on behalf of Truth Proof, I'm just going to say goodbye. Thank you, and leave it to Les. Maria, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Paul. Well, there we go. Another great show tonight from Maria, our great guest on tonight, and absolutely amazing accounts. And don't forget, buy the book, The Boogeyman Chronicles, and great reading, I'm sure. Right, so on that note, I've got to thank everybody for being in the chat, everybody for coming onto the stream tonight, everybody from the UK and around the world. Don't forget, tune in to us next week. We'll probably have another show. On that note, we are leaving. Bye-bye.